Welcome to Agoracom Q&A, a production of Agoracom in which we take questions from investors online and present them to CEOs of companies in order to answer them directly. Today with us, I'm happy to have again James Briscoe. He's chairman and CEO of Liberty Star Uranium. The company trades on the stock symbol LBSR. You can find them on the web at libertystaruranium.com, or as always, get to Agoracom, punch in the company's name or stock symbol, and engage in fantastic conversation with fellow shareholders and prospective shareholders of Liberty Star. Jim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, George. It's always a pleasure.
And for everyone at home who's watching this, you're probably used to Jim and I doing video, but because it's the weekend and Jim thought it'd be really important to get these questions and answers in before any SEC filings, we're kind of doing an audio only from our home. So Jim, I thank you for going out of your way to do that. We've got a bunch of questions here, and I'm going to get straight into them for you. The first one is, we purposely put as the first one because it's the longest, probably going to be your longest answer. It comes from Lake Smith. So Lake, thanks for submitting the question. Question is, what geological and mineralogical observations distinguish the discovery from what has been observed in the surrounding land?
Leif, this is a complex question and not easy to answer in lay terms, but we'll try. The first point is, it's frequently said, if you are looking for elephants, go to elephant country. We are in the hottest spot in the world, that being southeast Arizona, northern Mexico, and western New Mexico, within a 200-mile radius of Hay Mountain. So we are indeed in elephant country, and those are porphyry copper elephants, of course. Secondly, you need to find some indicator of potential for a porphyry copper in the vicinity of search. We did so, and these were: 1, a large and productive mining district adjacent with porphyry copper mineralization in it. That is Tombstone, Arizona, just 6.5 miles away, and Bisbee, a classic porphyry with skarn deposits, 15 miles south. And another district which I haven't regularly mentioned before is Cortland Gleason, which is just about 8 miles north, and other districts too numerous to mention at various points of the compass surrounding and at various distances from Hay Mountain. Then we need some linchpin that was not that defined a large but untested target. And that linchpin was Dr. Roger Newell's PhD dissertation, in which sampling of mesquite twigs on a 1/4 mile setter over about 130 square miles defined a very large multi-element target, which we now call Hay Mountain. This anomaly was larger and stronger than any of the other anomalies within the old part of the Tombstone district. We conducted a check survey using the same methodology, which we refer to as veggie sampling, under the oversight of our geochemical consultant, Shay Clark Smith. Now, Shay Clark is on our technical advisory board, and you can look at his picture and vitae, very short vitae, in our homepage under Technical Directors. Shay and I have been working together for approximately 25 years. He's a very practical but very innovative geochemist. The assays, even though taken 40 years later, reported the same values. We closely defined the currently what is seen in our multi-element anomaly, which has fingerprints of porphyry copper. A geophysical anomaly or two is always nice. We had a variety of historic geophysics, one run by a large mining company. I spent a significant amount of money early on in my evaluation of Roger's anomaly, an IP survey. However, the consulting company who redid all of the figures came back with the answer that there was too much coupling which means there's too much conductive alluvium to make this worthwhile. So that's remained in the background, although we do use it where it seems to be appropriate, although sparingly. We had aeromag that had been done years earlier that gave us a very large and strong magnetic anomaly over our geochem target. However, it had been done by analog methods, and we wanted a modern digital survey that was precisely located. I also developed a close relationship with Geotech of Aurora, Canada, after I helped them evaluate some of their early porphyry copper test cases over the Morenci region, and I evaluated that to show that the ZTEM was probably the best geophysical tool for discovering porphyries that I had ever seen. And if you will go to our homepage, you can see lots of information on the ZTEM system. Interestingly, I had them fly a survey over Big Chunk and convinced them that they should offer their services to Northern Dynasty for free, and they did, and that is why Northern Dynasty now has a very good ZTEM anomaly over the Pebble deposit. So we contracted them to fly a survey over Hay Mountain, and the results were outstanding. A large digital mag anomaly covering more than 35 square miles, indicating an interpreted intrusive body, and that means a magma that had intruded into the sediments and Precambrian rocks at depth below the current surface of about 6,000 feet. And that body is interpreted for various reasons as a granodiorite to granite body, which that won't mean anything to laymen. It does. It does for the professionals that may be looking or listening to this. This intrusive body is what's driving the porphyry copper mineralization and structure that may be included in the upper part of the Pluton and 6,000 feet above the current surface. And additionally, a very large natural source audio range magnetotelluric electromagnetic anomaly, which told us how deep the sulfides were from the surface. With the ZTEM giving us the depth and the VeggieGeoChem giving us metal values, we have developed a system in which various metals, which targets of various metals at probable depths of from near the surface, and I'm talking 200 feet in that range, to a depth of 6,000 or more feet.
Unbelievable.
With these multiple superimposed anomalies of various types, we have a very, very compelling porphyry copper target, and it looks just like it should, which is also nice.
Jim, that was a pretty unbelievable in-depth answer. I don't think I've ever heard an answer like that. But when you put all of that together and all those different things, I think it gives both Leif, who asked the question, and everybody else at home a great deal of confidence as to why what distinguishes Hay Mountain from everything else in the surrounding area. Leif had a follow-up question, which is why are the recent findings remarkable?
They are remarkable because the Gossan, which was discovered in late September and is pictured on our website, represents a leakage of massive sulfides typical of altered limestone or copper scarred replacement deposits that reveals what we were seeking all along, and it is squeezing up along a fracture zone and is exposed at what is now the surface. We really didn't expect to see anything like this because we assumed it was 50 to 300 feet down. We can't really tell on our geophysics nor geochemistry the exact depth. But this Gaussian then forms a guide to probably what lies shallowly below. It's associated with widespread breccia pipes and alteration, and we conclude that there is a chance that it will expand rapidly with more depth that we will drill and occupy a large area associated with the extensive surface alteration. Now, I've used a lot of geologic terms there, but please refer to our website and look at the glossary that is contained therein, which has been specifically built for the layman, and you will see these terms in their layman's definitions. Okay, further, there is no evidence of prospecting or sampling in the vicinity or at this high-grade outcrop. Thus, we believe that it has never been seen by man before, or if they'd seen it, they didn't have any idea of its significance, nor did they break it or try and use it for jewelry, which is very common in the Aboriginal peoples that populated this area and different tribes at different eras. If erosion had gone much deeper, we believe that this exposure that's only a few tens of inches in size would have blossomed out and formed a large surface anomaly or surface exposure, and then it would have been discovered by the Indians and would have been also discovered by Spanish and Mexican prospectors, much like the deposits in New Mexico at Santa Rita, which was approximately 200 years ago, or at Bisbee, which was 140 years ago. And therefore, it would have been a mine now, and we would not be able to benefit from it as we hope to.
Well, that's good news for all of us at Liberty Star, that's for sure. So thank goodness for that. Jim, let me ask something. Besides copper, well, because we talk about copper all the time, because it's obviously the major metal there. What other metals do you expect to find at the first couple of targets? And that's the question that comes from L. Vargas. Okay,
the porphyry coppers we now know, and this wasn't known early on. In fact, when we started getting, we are assaying the veggie samples for 51 different elements, and as they started to come back, it was clear that annular rings, like a bullseye on a archery target or rifle target, if you will, are arranged in zones outwards from the porphyry copper center. And I asked Dr. John Gilbert about this early on, and he said, Jim, when we were devising the porphyry copper model at San Manuel, we had assays for copper, molybdenum, gold, silver, lead, and zinc. That was it. We don't know anything about, or did not know at that time, anything about these other elements. But there's a whole plethora of them, and they are arranged in a sequence outward bound from the porphyry copper center. The porphyry copper center itself is a zone which contains secondary potassium, feldspar, magnetite, molybdenum, and as you move outwards, then you get more copper. And then there is generally a copper ring, copper moly ring, and then a copper ring, and then on outwards. And in the distal areas, you get things like gallium, rare earth elements, radium and uranium, and a whole bunch of different elements that wouldn't mean anything to people. In this answer, we can say that molybdenum would be encountered probably, although we're in the outer portion of the copper zone. So it may be that there won't be much molybdenum, but perhaps lead, silver, and manganese. And then when we step out, we'll get lead and zinc uh, and other elements as we get further out. But within what will probably be the mining area, it will be primarily copper and molybdenum and gold and lead and zinc. And the zoning pattern is affected by the fact that the porphyry copper is intruded into Paleozoic sediments, and therefore the normal pattern is somewhat inverted because copper is soluble in acid and moly is insoluble in acid, but molybdenum or moly is soluble in alkaline solutions, and therefore we believe that it is quite mobile in this environment, whereas the copper is very insoluble in alkaline systems, and that really means limestone as calcium carbonate. Sorry to get so complex on that, but it's important.
Jim, the next question comes in from Willyberg D. And their question is, based on the last NAK resource report, it appears Pebble East, discovered by Liberty Star, has even better grades than Pebble West.
That is true. However, NAK thinks that they discovered it first, but that is not true. It was first indicated by our veggie geochem, but their senior management never knew that because of internal communications challenges.
Willyberg D then goes on to ask, did Liberty Star's success at Pebble East help alter or influence its approach at Hay Mountain?
Actually, our success at Silver Bell, using and developing the methodology for veggie geochemistry, led us into the big chunk where we used the same geochemical approach with tundra plants to get the first indications of Pebble East.
Did the manner in which Pebble East was drilled out offer any particular insights as to how to approach Hay Mountain?
No, the targeting is the most important thing, and knowing where you are within the system. And due to my efforts in convincing the guys at Geotech to volunteer to fly ZTEM over the Pebble deposit, they have benefited from that, and so they can use that targeting. And of course, we also voluntarily gave them our veggie data. So if they use that, and they haven't told me whether they have or haven't, but if they did use it, then that would have been particularly helpful to them, because as I earlier stated, with the ZTEM, you get depth indications, and with the geochem, you understand what elements are vertically below you. But drilling is drilling, and you need to use the most effective diamond core drilling crews available, which Northern Dynasty did, and then good core recovery is paramount. And the drill core recovery at the big chunk was very easy. It was not terribly broken up, and we got essentially almost 100% of the core.
And Willyberg D has a great final question to all this, which I'm sure a lot of people are asking here as a follow-up. Given all of this information going back and forth and some of the communications and things like that, does Liberty Star maintain any kind of relationship with either NAK or HDI mining? So Northern Dynasty or HDI?
The answer is no.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Value Pro has a question here. What is the estimated turnaround time between sending drill core to the lab and receipt of results, given that these will be shallow holes?
Well, first, please reread News Release 195 in February 24 of this year and Drilling Plan of Operations announcement on October 22nd, in which we describe sampling drill cuttings from the Solids Recovery Unit, or for short, the SRU, in which I describe how this unit works. It spins a centrifuge at about 3,000 RPM to segregate cuttings coming out of the drill hole from clean mud drilling fluid, which is then circulated back into the hole. As you can pick out the interval from which the cuttings are recovered very accurately, for example, 100 feet to 105 feet, one can then put those cuttings in a bag and thoroughly mix them, and then put a sample in the Niton XRF, or X-ray fluorescence analyzer cup, and analyze that well-mixed sample, which will be representative of the core drilled from that interval, 105 feet and a 5-foot interval. This just takes a few minutes, say 6 to 7 minutes, while the next interval is being drilled. The XRF assay is quite accurate within known ranges, and thus one can pretty closely say what was intersected before the drill core ever came out or comes out of the drill hole.
Wow.
This was done in the early days, say in the 30s through the 50s, when samples from diamond core drilling mud were caught in buckets or tubs and the cuttings were allowed to settle. After settling, the samples of the cuttings were assayed and compared with assays of the split core. This was done because frequently the best mineralization was ground up in the core cutting compound, or the core drilling activity, and while the stuff that was caught in the buckets and basins, because it wasn't particularly clean, in other words, it was salted by material coming from earlier drillings, it was better than nothing. And this was actually written up in a mining handbook called Mining Geology, but generally referred to by the simple name McKinstry because it was so famous. And my mentor and friend, Kenyon Richard, actually, I believe, authored that section. So it was a very quick decision for me to realize that if we had 99% clean cuttings, cuttings coming up out of the drill hole and separated very carefully, that we could assay them by the Niton. And so that's what we decided to do. Of course, when the core does get to the surface, we will split it in the normal way with a diamond saw and adhering to all of the precepts of the Canadian 43101 prescriptions, and send it to certified assays for standard multi-element assaying.
Value Pro goes on to ask, will the lab be asked to withhold results from the first hole pending completion of work on the second one?
No, we always get assays back from the assayer as soon as they can get it done, and of course now this is transmitted by computer in spreadsheets. But we will probably hold that information until we get all of the certified assays back, in part because partial information doesn't help much. But as always, the company's judgment of material information, we may judge material information to be required being released, and we would release it in a timely manner.
How certain is the timeline looking for drilling in mid-January?
The Arizona State Land Department has 60 to 90 days to approve the native plant survey and the drilling plan of operations. So we can set a timeline to January, but it could be February. In fact, they, for whatever reason, may take longer than 90 days, so we must wait for them. Possibly, they might get it done earlier, and then we would work to start the drilling program earlier. However, that puts us right in the midst of the Christmas season And
Right.
everybody's thinking about Christmas, not drilling.
That's for sure. And finally, he goes on to ask, the Native Plant Survey company, are they working on that currently?
Well, we've already made the contract, and they are going to fit that into their schedule, and that's going to be early in November. The plant survey only takes a day or two, well, let's say 2 days, not including mob and demob, and so this is going to be very rapid. And I'd interject here that every time we take a sample or make a rock observation or a rock sample, or drill a drill hole or take a niton reading, we photograph that with digital photographs, so we know intimately what every place that we've been to actually looks like in color imagery. And of course now with the program that goes on to the iPhone called Theodolite, that gives us the elevation and the UTM coordinates and a bunch of other things as well as the date. So that will be helpful in the plant survey as well.
Jim, let's go on to discuss here in the final phase of these questions here, financing. And L. Vargas asked pretty straight out here, is the drilling money for the first holes in hand right now?
A small amount of it is. However, we have been talking about this project with other funders, and we believe that we will have it funded by the time the rigs are ready to roll and spud in the first hole.
Paul also asked a question where he said, I'd like to know what the possibility of getting funding is.
Well, Paul, has been widely reported, the financial situation in our industry is as bad as it has ever been, comparable to the Great Depression. Nonetheless, we're working with a few groups that are seriously considering financing phase one. We hope to report positive results soon. But it is a tough climate, I will tell you that.
Yeah, and I can tell you that just from my own experience in this industry. It is incredibly tough. And hopefully, though, with the few groups that are seriously considering it, you're going to have some success there. The next question comes from Willie Berg D again, which says, if Liberty Star only has funds available to drill the first 2 holes, but not the remaining 9, will the company proceed with drilling in January or wait until funding is available for all 11 holes?
We will proceed as funds are available and as data and results continue to justify further drilling. If we hit more 20% plus copper in the drilling, I think the funds will flow in rapidly. If we don't, then it will be problematic.
And that's par for the course, right? That's you've got to have success in order to attract continued financing. So Liberty Star isn't in any different situation from other companies. But given the amount of work we've done and everything we've discussed today, it's I mean, my own personal opinion, it looks very promising that that the company knows exactly where it's going here. Last question from Willie Berg D. For those that elect to fund the near-surface exploration of Hayman, would that also entitle them to participation in any deep ore body, should it be later discovered, or would near-surface and underground portions be treated distinctly?
No distinction would be made. I'm afraid parsing ore bodies in depth would get gigantically complicated and probably result in lots of annoyance and perhaps even lawsuits. That's what happened at Butte, Montana in the turn of the century, and no good comes of that. So investors now would be rewarded by stock appreciation, and for large private placement investments, there will be some incentives for that too. So the specific answer would be they would be rewarded by stock appreciation, or in or other in terms yet to be recognized, and this would be for people who want to put in hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, and we are prepared to negotiate those should anybody want to call us and talk about it.
Jim, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. This was lengthy but important, and I also want to take the time to thank all the shareholders and participants who submitted their questions. Fantastic questions, very probative. You put Jim to the test, and Jim's been able to provide even better information for everyone. So, Jim, thanks so much for doing this, especially on a Sunday after Halloween.
Not a problem at all, George. And I would like to end this by saying that any shareholder that wants to take a visit to the property is always welcome to do so. However, we may require a confidentiality agreement, but aside from those details, we have always invited shareholder visits, and in fact have made quite a number, and it's always pleasant to get together with the actual shareholders and take them on a good field trip, which sometimes includes Bisbee, and now there's an interesting mine tour at Tombstone, which allows them to see what kind of a deposit we might be looking at when we uncover Hay Mountain to be the ore body that we believe it will be. So thanks again, George.
Thank you, Jim. And by the way, I'm going to add one small point to that for everyone at home. Anytime you got a company that's confident enough to invite you to take a tour and take a look at the goods, you know that they feel very confident about what they're doing. So if you can, I'd encourage everyone at home to take the company up on that offer if it's possible. So you've been listening to James A. Briscoe. He's, amongst other things, Chairman and CEO at Liberty Star Uranium. The company trades on the stock symbol LBSR. You can find him online at libertystaruranium.com, which is where you go to check out some of the follow-up information that Jim referred to during this Q&A. Or, as always, get us up over to Gorcom, ask more questions, get answers, and have great conversations with fellow shareholders and prospective shareholders of Liberty Star Uranium. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.